Welcome to the Real Recovery Show. We air every week and our shows are posted on Fridays. You can go to themeetingspace.com to see all of our episodes. Today's episode is somebody that I've heard speak, and when I heard him speak, I knew I wanted to have him on the show. I've always had this special feeling whenever I saw him, like there was some reason I'm supposed to know him, and the moment I heard him speak, I knew like he was supposed to be on the show. And so I love that. I love when I feel very God-directed on topics or on who to interview, and just surrender to that process and go with it. So one of the things that I really liked about his share was how clear and honest and sincere he was in talking about, what life was really like and how, growing up and also with his family, with his brother specifically, and what it took for him to be willing to make a change. As you probably know, if you've seen other episodes, I grew up in alcoholism and addiction. There was very little solution-oriented tools in my family. And I learned how to be an addict from other family members, from watching them. I sincerely wanted to know what to do with my feelings. And I did not find anything that was really healthy. Even though I feel like my mom tried in her own way, and we had self-help books all over the house, which I read, which didn't fix me because I was an addict. But anyway, I digress. So, but sometimes it takes, something happening in our own life where our own life becomes, intolerable to us for us to make a change. And sometimes it hits us in a different way. Sometimes it's that plus something that happens with somebody that we love. And that's what's a little unique about this story. So stay tuned. Today we're joined with Sloan, who has 886 days.
886 days of reprise, yeah.
All right.
A little bit over 29 months. So they don't give you chips for that.
Yeah. No, you don't. But I can make custom ones, so at the recovery store, a little plug. But anyway, so we're just going to start off talking about, because there's so much to a story, so we're just going to start off right away talking about what your life was like as a child growing up, what your family looked like, what your situation with your brother was, where your headspace was.
So I'm the middle child and born and raised in Vegas. I'd say rather like kind of an affluent upbringing, had all the things, did sports, did all the activities and stuff. And was raised with both parents for a while. And then my dad kind of started to go off the rails. He was diagnosed as schizophrenic with multiple personalities. And so my mom and him separated, and I kind of stepped into the role of substitute parent at that point, did party drugs and stuff in high school. And then my older brother went to college, and that's when it was really like I felt that there was kind of self-induced, I would say, but I felt like I had to be the parent. I felt like I had to be there for my little brother and sister, and started smoking pot more daily. Started more than I was just drinking on the weekends, party drugs on the weekends, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was the oldest, and I did feel like I had to take care of people, and that overdeveloped sense of responsibility, that codependency I could slip into if I'm not, too careful. That weight on my shoulders that I took on, a lot of it, makes me very uncomfortable. I martyr. I sacrifice, then I need to do something to make myself feel better, because my life's too hard. And it's crazy how much unlearning I've had to do around that.
Yeah. And so it started to get, I would say, maybe more toxic, I would say. When my brother was in college, my dad was found overdosed from Xanax.
Wow.
In the Virgin River up in Utah. And, I remember my grandparents coming to the door and telling us it, and I was just numb. I didn't cry. I think in my head I already knew what was going on, because he was an addict and an alcoholic just like us. And so, jails, institutions, all those things, just not death. And whenever he was in jail, I remember me and my mom talking. It's like, well, at least we know where he is.
Yeah.
You know, we know he's there. And then seeing, so after he passed away, I couldn't see the body, right? Because he died in the Virgin River, and you know, we won't go into that, but you know, I had to see it. I was like, I need to see something to have some kind of a closure to that. So I seen the coroner's photos of them pulling him out of the river. And it was almost a relief, you know. I didn't know at the time how traumatic it was, but it was something I felt that I needed personally to see. And you know, closed casket, 2 different funerals, one in Utah, one here, and then it was just off to the races.
And
from
how
there.
old were you then?
16.
16.
It was the summer before my senior year of high school. So
he was diagnosed with those psychiatric conditions, but not as an addict?
He was diagnosed with those, but I think that was the family trying to cover it up. You know, because it's easier it was easier to say that somebody is schizophrenic than has meth-induced psychosis.
Don't you think that that's crazy?
It's wild.
I mean, really. And I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. They were going on and on about how a family member was diagnosed with this and diagnosed with that, and then just added that they did alcohol and drugs. And I said, wait a second. Everything that you just said before alcohol and drugs, like, it completely took all of the weight of me believing that out, because I've seen so many people get into recovery with a long list of diagnoses. And when they go through recovery and they really deal with some of this stuff, they straighten out.
Yeah.
And they didn't really have a lot of the conditions that they thought they had, because it was all like their own pharmacy going on. And their brain just not having any kind of like level, balance, homeostasis to it. You know, and so that happens a lot more than people realize. You know?
Yeah, I think that the majority of times that you hear about mental illnesses and stuff like that, there's going to be some kind of chemical dependency.
I listened for it to see if there is something. I wanted to ask, but I didn't want to assume.
Yeah.
You know, but then when you said it, I was like, okay, because I mean, honestly, we talk a lot in recovery about how, you know, people will go to the doctor because they want to get the pill. They don't go to the doctor because they really want to be honest and share what's really going on. And nobody wants to admit they're doing illegal substances. And certainly nobody wants to admit to themselves that they're having a problem, right? And so the last person sometimes that knows what's really going on is the person that could help them the most, you know, maybe at the point, the doctor. So mental illness has different faces to it. And a lot of times it's instability created by either drug use or certain thought patterns, certain beliefs that when a person can question those ideas and release them, they balance out. You know, I myself is here.
And I think he never really gave himself a chance to have a good medication that helped. You know, and after doing all the drugs that he did, you know, the same ones, I understand it. Right, because you get that dopamine raise in your brain. Meth is like 900 times. You know, and then I hear stories about him smoking meth on the top of the car dealership that he owned. And these wild things. And I'm like, dude, this makes sense. This makes sense about the conspiracy theories, about all the stuff that I just chalked up as crazy, you know, voices in his head. It's meth-induced psychosis.
It's interesting too, because the way you're sharing shows that through your own recovery, through your own understanding of alcoholism and addiction, you've gotten to a level of forgiveness for him. I just got the chills.
He was sick. I just got chills too.
Yeah.
Which is,
Shooting around the room.
He was sick.
Yeah.
You know, and so I can't put any blame on him. And it's a really, really like crazy full circle moment for me to see, like, man, he just never got it.
Yeah.
He never got into the groups that I got into. He never got into the, we'll say, solution-based thinking. And he was a victim of his own mind, you know, of what he thought other people thought of him, of the expectations, the victimization, all of those things. And so he's at peace now. You know, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. But he's at peace. And I think the same thing goes for my little brother. Right? Like, so I lost my little brother of a fentanyl overdose. And so my dad dies, right, when I'm 16. And then I just covered it up. I numbed myself for 20 years. And
doing the same thing.
The same cycle, right?
Yeah, you
the
think
apple
that this
doesn't,
was an ominous warning.
and
You
that's
think that it's like, I'm not going to be like them. But there's a weird thing, and this is true about everything, not just with addiction, but the thing that you most focus on is the thing that you become. And so you could tell yourself, I'm not going to be like them. And you will end up in some way like them or worse. I was like, not going to be like my parents. No way. And I ended up a combo platter of both of them and not their best traits.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
there you are. You're doing the same thing, even though he ended up dying from this.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing about it that said, hey, this is wonderful.
Yep.
Come this way, Yeah,
my brain was just like, and my heart and my soul just wanted to cover it up, put a gloss cover over it. And, and
we do what we learn on how to cope.
Yeah.
And when you're around people that only know how to cope by self-medicating and doing certain avoidance behaviors, then for me, it was like the only thing I could do. I didn't have any other solutions.
Yeah.
I knew I was doing something that wasn't necessarily optimal for me. I doubt you felt like this was like the winning thing.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't the greatest thing, and it's interesting to see like what his journey was through it,
Mm-hmm.
Doctor shopping and all the things. And then seeing my journey through being, I'd say, overprescribed, right? Opiates, and then it developing and it all ends at the same place.
Mm-hmm.
It all does, and I'm very fortunate that I kind of was able to see that gift of desperation happen, because a lot
in time.
Yeah, a lot of rock bottoms are death.
Yeah.
People like to talk about rock bottom, and for me, I don't like that term, right? It's probably on some of the work that I've gone through internally,
right.
But to me, it's a moment of clarity that I got. I got a moment of clarity. I was able to ask that important word, ask for help, and get into help. Get into help.
I think for me, it's just being done. I mean, because a lot of times where I think that if I have this happen, then I will stop and I will do whatever. And then that became my new normal, and then I did something else, and switched addictions and tried to manage it and whatever. And I think that for everybody, it doesn't look like something. We've talked about this before. It has to be where you have that shift, that moment where you say, you know what am I doing? And no, I have to do something different. My life, there has to be another way than this.
And it was, I don't know if it was not my choice place to have it happen, right? But I'm sitting on my toilet doing a line off my phone,
mm-hmm.
and either got a call from my cousin or called my brother. And I told him, I said, hey, I relapsed. And he goes, I know. And then I became the victim instantly again. So in my head, I'm like, you knew? So you're just letting me do this?
Right.
How dare you? I start pointing the finger, and took a little bit of time in rehab to, they did the right thing. They let me hit that rock bottom to get that moment of clarity, to give myself a chance at this thing.
Was that your only time ever being in a rehab?
No, that was my third.
Third time.
That was my third rehab.
So what was your first like?
I went to one in 2010 after having my own place. I was out at 18 and then went from Lortabs to Roxy's, and went from snorting them to smoking them. And that really took me downhill fast. And so I ended up more or less sleeping on the floor at my mom's house, and got to a point where I was just sick of it. I was sick of being me. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live. Mm-hmm. And I go to my little sister and I said, if the fire department or ambulance call you, I'm sorry. And I left. And that was a cry for help. It wasn't that I wasn't going to go commit suicide or do anything. I went and picked up heroin and played nickel slots till they found me. And then I went and checked into a place down in California, and I was there for 45 days, but looking in hindsight, I wasn't ready, right? Because I was just answering the questions with fill in the blank answers. And, I didn't pick a higher power. I didn't trust it.
Right.
I wasn't fully ready. I did it because of other people's expectations, what I thought they thought of me. And after 45 days in there, I made an excuse to leave, right? Playing the victim. I'm like, hey, it was over a pee test because I couldn't pee with this big guy standing behind me. And so I made it like they did this to me, you know, poor me. I was shooting the flamethrower everywhere and got back in town. And within 6 months, I was drinking again. You know, within a few months after that, I'm smoking pot again. And within 2 years, I'm doing pills again. Mm-hmm. You know, and so that was the first one.
So I kind of feel like when enough of my mind isn't done, there's still a battle going on. And so even if temporarily there's enough of my mind wanting a solution, wait for it, because other Lisa will come out, and if repressed and not dealt with, she'll be like, how long are we going to do this? Because I'm starting to get a little like cranky back here and I feel like I need some expression. And I think I'm thinking the thoughts that I then have. I think that the words that are coming out of my mouth are my own. Mm-hmm. But there's this restless, irritable, discontent part of me that doesn't have a solution and is running on toxic thinking and sells the whole life back to me, like edited with all the bad shit out.
Yeah.
You know, like downplayed all the bad, exaggerated all the good, and tells me this one lie that gets me willing to sign up. This time it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you know what? You're right. Why am I even here? I just needed a break. This is stupid. This is not what I need. They don't understand me. I'm different anyway. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I just need to do it this way. I needed to take a rest and now I'm good.
Yeah. It was, I'm not like you.
Yeah.
You don't know what I'm going through. I'm you know, better at it than you. Yeah. I could successfully do this.
Right.
And I went as an addict.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, no, I'm an addict.
Yeah.
I am full on addict. My drug of choice is opiates. And I didn't give alcohol the respect that it needed.
Oh.
You know, and that was the gateway for me. It was alcohol, but I didn't know that till after.
Like, I'll just drink.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with alcohol, so I'll just drink.
I could do a beer. That's no problem. You know, or start with wine.
Sure.
I'm just having a little wine while I'm cooking. No big deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
So I was very wrong. Yeah. And then
you know, that happens on the flip too. When somebody who's been in recovery from alcohol and never had a problem with drugs has an injury and they have to have surgery and they go, I've never had a problem with pills. And it's like, well, so you need to have a little bit more respect for this stuff and just tell the doctor that you have addiction because you don't know.
Yeah, because your brain's a little different.
Yeah.
You know, our brains are formed a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough one to learn. And I'm thankful that I did learn that, though, right? Because there's a lot of people that don't get that chance. Mm-hmm. And so the second place that I went to a detox in 2018. And those were some tough years.
What
right?
made you go to that one?
So I got married in those years, right? Had a baby, got a divorce. My ex left town. Mm-hmm. And so she was off doing her thing in another state, and before she came back, I wanted to show that she's the bad parent. You know, I wanted to get full custody, and I was a hot mess myself, right? It was such a hypocritical thing to do.
Was she doing drugs?
Yeah, she was doing stuff too, which is it's good now because she's in recovery. She's got more time than me, so it's nice to be able to say that, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm pointing the finger at her. I'm like, I'm going to take you to court and get full custody of this kid who I've had the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say just this kid. I love him. But that was my thinking. Right. You know, I'm going to show you. And so I go into the custody hearing with heroin and on foil through a metal detector to show that she's the drug addict. Right. And it's like, dude, right before I went in there, I went to a detox because I was, you know, I'm like, dude, I can't do this, right? I'm doing too much. I'm withdrawing. I have to show that she's the bad one. So I go to a detox for a week. And after that, I'm like, look, I'm not paying you guys. I came here for a week. I'm not going to do the extra stuff. I don't need it. That's not me. I'm capable of handling this myself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's not the way it worked out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of feel like, you know, it takes humility to be able to really hear our intuition, but it takes humility to be able to even understand and have an open mind to even understand addiction. You know, like there's so much, I got it. I know. You know, you don't know me. You know, there's so much at the surface, and we have to be willing to like be humbled and open to be, maybe I don't. maybe I don't got this. Maybe I could learn what's really going on with me.
Yeah.
And what's really, and then if we're sincerely wanting to learn, then something can shift in our mind.
Yeah. That look inward.
Yeah.
That's, and the willingness.
Which is the last place we wanted to
Nobody
look.
wants to. Nobody wants to be.
Well, the whole addiction is anywhere but here.
Yep.
Anybody but me.
Yeah.
I don't want to look inside. That's the last place I want to go.
Yep.
And that's the place I have to go to be able to face myself, to be able to find out that I'm not the piece of shit that I thought I was.
Yeah.
You know, to find God, to find my intuition, you know, to get right with myself. But when we're in our addiction, that's the last thing we want.
Yeah,
and I could go forever.
We're all chameleons in that.
Yeah.
You know, we're chameleons. We can handle every single room, every situation, every emotion.
We think we're so cool.
But we don't even know who we are. You know,
Right.
I didn't know me when I was doing those things. You know,
Right.
I thought I was content.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. No, that's not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's all my problem. And my problem was me.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought that. You know,
Yeah.
it's easier to say, hey, I'm a victim. Poor me, my dad died, this, that, and the other. But no, then I get into recovery this last time, and I finally see my part in things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I finally see what caused all of it, and that it was something internal that, you know, between that and having a higher power, man, what a crazy thing to take 2 decades away from my life, but to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's such a trip,
Yeah.
you know?
So when you got out of that rehab, the second one, and you got custody?
No.
You didn't?
No, it was 50-50.
It was 50-50.
Yeah, I had an attorney, I did all the things, and it ended up taking a lot out of me, doing all the things that I was trying to do to show that she was the bad person. And we ended up going with 50-50 custody. She had to do drug tests before she seen him, and that was an interesting process in itself. Right. There was things that were happening. It wasn't choice, but I was always a believer that she deserved to see him, you know? So I did the things that I could do. And I mean, I was full in my addiction at the time. So me trying to justify and say, hey, I'm going to let her see him. Like now I'm thankful that I still had him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because all of the stuff that I was doing. And so I don't know. It's just
How old is he now?
He's 8.
See?
Yeah. And my boy Epic, he's a good kid too.
It's a great name.
I take him to meetings and he's fully immersed in it. His mom works in recovery, so he sees all the things, you know.
Okay. That's
and
awesome.
his verbiage is funny sometimes too. He told me he's addicted to his iPad.
That's cute.
Oh,
He's listening.
Goodness. Yeah.
Well, that's good. That's good. Let him absorb all of the recovery he could possibly get. So then you ended up, so what happened around your brother? What happened that made you finally get help?
So after I went to the second place, my ex-wife got back in town, and by that time I'm doing meth because I was so depressed from not doing the other stuff because my dopamine levels were so low. And so then it just transformed. It got real bad, right? I started working as a cashier, worked up to assistant food beverage director, graduated college, all while a functional alcoholic, you know.
On meth.
Yeah, on meth,
Yeah.
pills, everything. I was
Yeah.
polysubstance user.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything,
Yeah.
you know. So me and my little brother had a problem, like just a disagreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I hadn't talked to him for a few days. I reached out to him and I, you know, said, I'm sorry. It's not what it looks like, not what it was presented as. And I said, I love you, right? And he says, I love you back. So then I go over to my mom's house. I was supposed to see him the day before, but I was too dope sick, right? I was withdrawing. I'm like, I can't go over there unless I'm high. So I go over there the next day and I'm up in my mom's room for a few hours, right? Got my son with me. And I hear screams from downstairs. And it was his buddy who lived at my mom's found him overdosed. And to hear the screams, to hear the things that came out, you know, I couldn't even go down there. I hear my mom yelling, rigor mortis has set in. Please, God, help. And hearing all those things. And so I knew it. I knew it right away, right? Because he had been through multiple treatment centers.
Mm.
And I loved to party with him. So it was an equal. And I'm like, it's either going to be me or him.
Mm.
And my mom was at my house 3 days earlier because I was so depressed. I wasn't answering my phone and they thought I was dead.
God, that must have been really hard on her too.
So all the stuff that I put her through. And yeah, so he's down there. He's been dead for a while, right? 6 hours plus.
Wow.
He's cold.
So she didn't see him dying. She found him dead.
His friend found him, and then she went down there.
Oh, wow.
And then I my son was there too.
Oh man.
So I have this fear-based thinking of like, man, this could be me.
Mm.
You know, so I and then I hearing the screams and all the traumatic things that were happening. I took him, and somebody took him. I made a call, and then I went down there, and I see, you know, he's got one eye open.
Oh.
His eye's gray because there's no blood left in his body. And it's just
Wow.
a terror. I mean, PTSD is one thing, but seeing your little brother, somebody who I was his protector, you know, seeing him passed away like that was my gift of desperation. That was the moment, not, well, a month later, but that was it for me. That was
a serious seed.
Yeah, that was. And being on meth, you know, I wanted to find the guys who sold him the stuff, right? I'm like, let's give this to the detectives. Let's be a researcher or whatever the deal is.
Forensic.
Like I'm going to be detective. That's good. And so I do a bunch of research, figure out all these things about these people, right? Have vengeance in my heart. I'm like, these guys sold this to him. But then, so then I find the same fentanyl pills that killed him. And I'm like, I'm going to give these to the detectives. I don't know what I was thinking, right? I'm on meth. So I didn't give them to the detectives. We didn't do any of that stuff, right? I started taking them, and that's when I made the call.
So what was your thinking when you were taking them? Were you thinking that it wasn't going to affect you? Were you thinking that it was, you were done? Were you thinking that you just couldn't take how you felt?
I think it was the avoidance of feelings, of numbing. It didn't matter what happened to him. It was about me, right? And just trying to avoid all those things. And it was reminiscent of my dad passing away.
But why those drugs? Like, why not just have more meth? Why not just smoke? Why not just do other things? And like, what do you know? Like, what made you say, you know what?
I think that was like the bottom of the bottom for me of, you know, like I never shot up. I never did a few different things. And so I always looked at it like, I haven't done that yet, right? And I was like, I never done fentanyl. And at that point, I didn't care, right? I was so numb. I was so lost that I just wanted to be gone. Like, not
I get it.
Not dead, you know, but didn't want to feel any feelings.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about it. I didn't think about dying. That didn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
Which is a wild thing to just see it. And then the insanity of the disease is like, hey, you need that so you can feel better.
Yeah.
You know, what a twisted thing.
Do you think any of it that you were identified with your brother too, and that maybe made you want to do that too, to join? I
don't know if I wanted to join. I don't know if I wanted to die. Right? Like I said before, I just didn't know how to live, and I was so comfortable numbing myself.
There's so many times in my life where I felt like a rat in the cage, like trying to find a way out of the cage, and then just knowing I didn't have a way, and then just taking the poison, taking whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like there's so many times where like that's where my headspace was, and it actually is how I feel. Like when I get triggered, because I've had complex PTSD up the you know what, and when I feel triggered, because I still have a little bit of it left, there is this like vibration in my body, and I feel like I can't, you know, and I have like 24 years now off of drugs and alcohol, and there'll be a moment where something comes up and it goes, I can't do, and my mind literally goes, well, this would have been a time when you'd done that. This would have been a time when you would have done that. And my mind goes, I can't.
Yeah.
You know, and then it goes, you have to feel this.
Yep.
You have to be with this. And just like get through it.
Yeah.
And like there's this like compression that happens after an inner like feeling of like, is there no window in this?
Yeah.
You know, like kind of a feeling. And only another person who's gone through that can understand what that feels like, to be so restless and irritable and discontent. You know?
And having recovery is interesting because you have to feel all the feelings. There's not a whole lot of outlets of escape like there was in our diseases, right? Like So you go through something and you feel that internal struggle happening, and you're like, I have fleeting thoughts too, right? Like, it'd be real nice to do a line of meth right now. My whole house would be clean. And I'm like, no, dude, you can't, because your house wouldn't be clean.
This meditation would be so much better on pain pills.
Yeah, like my back wouldn't hurt, right? But then I'm like, no, dude, look where you ended up. You know, so it's having those fleeting thoughts and playing the tape through and then figuring out, hey, no way, dude. There's no possible way that you could do meth like a gentleman. Right. You know what I mean? Or smoke pills off foil like a gentleman.
Just think through the drink. You know, I don't, and plus, this too shall pass, and whatever's coming up, it's on its way out, and I've already healed a lot of this, and I just need to be with it, and I need to process it, but we learned tools, but with that, when we didn't have tools, there was only windows in that, like, trying to get out, there was no, like, way of actually dealing with it. So at this point, we're going to take a break and we're going to go to commercial. Please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. See you in a bit.
The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The Recovery Store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the Recovery Store and the Meeting Space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you, who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.
Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. We're joined here today with Sloan and Bear, which is Bear right here, which you can barely see his face because it's behind the microphone, but you might hear him. Please remember you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app or get our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. And of course, we have a new YouTube channel, and all of our episodes are posted on that. Just look for the Real Recovery Show. Or you can go to themetingspace.com and click on one of the links to any of the things I just mentioned. And please help us get the message out. I stink at promoting and would love any kind of help. So this is like an outreach request. Anybody who wants to help me do that, that would be awesome. I like to talk. I don't necessarily like to promote. But anyway, so before the break, we were talking about, what led up to being entirely willing to do whatever it takes to heal, right? But we come into recovery with a head full of what doesn't work and no idea how to not only not drink or do drugs, but how to live. How to live and be comfortable in our own skin, and how to fix and repair some of the relationships and clean up our act a little bit. And this is a whole new world. Because this is stuff we never even learned. It was stuff that we weren't even exposed to necessarily, or had ears at the time to even hear, right? So you're in recovery.
So I go to a 35-day in-house treatment center, and then
Which one was it?
Oh my gosh, I can't think of it. Lionsgate.
Oh, okay, that's good. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about them.
And it was a fantastic one up in Utah. I mean, at first my brother's like, hey, help us find a rehab for you. So I picked one in Hawaii.
Of course.
With the art program on.
Right.
Yeah, like that didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
I ended up in St. George, or a little bit outside of St. George. So I go there, 90 days of IOP afterwards, slowly made my way back to Vegas, right? I came back on the weekends for my son, but took it serious, right? It was life or death for me. After seeing what I seen, I knew that I really had to take this thing serious. I was no longer an addict, right? I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I am all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I need to follow the suggestions. I need to actually give this thing a earnest try,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to end up like, I didn't want my legacy to be the imprint I left in my bed and my son finding me. And after seeing it for the second time in my family and just experiencing it throughout my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is my shot, right? I'm so tired of being tired. I don't like who I am. And like you're saying, we don't know how to be adults. We don't know how to do all these things. You got to retrain your brain.
Yeah.
So I start following suggestions. I find a group of people that I could relate to, right?
Yeah.
I shopped around a little bit, found somewhere that I liked, somewhere that was solution-based, that had people that were loving and that could love me until I could figure out what that even meant,
Yeah.
and got...
It's amazing when somebody's ready for the solution. It's amazing the people that appear, and people could be in the rooms of recovery even and not actually get recovery because their head's not ready. But the moment that somebody's ready, all of a sudden the right people show up and the answers we can hear better and the solutions. So yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one thing, right? You could,
right.
Like when I did it before, I just did maybe one out of the 3 things you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't work,
Mm-hmm.
right? You look at the statistical data on it, and it doesn't work unless
you have to be willing to do whatever it takes.
All of the stuff.
There has to be.
Yeah,
and if you're
everything.
not, like oftentimes when somebody asks to work with me, I have to ask them, are you willing to do whatever it takes? Because if you're not, maybe you're not ready.
Yeah.
And don't waste my time because I really will give you everything I can.
Yeah.
But if you're not ready, it's not going to help you.
And it's kind of a tough thing guiding people through this process.
Yeah.
And then realizing like, hey, I don't think this person's as
it gives us
ready
a
as-
healthy respect for the willingness that needs to take place though.
Yeah.
Because somebody can need it, but recovery is really packed with people who want it. It's not just people who need it. There's plenty of people in the world that need it that don't get it.
There will always be an overflow of people that need it.
Yeah.
And after looking internally and seeing what happened and the processes and all those things, you could spot it a mile away.
Yeah.
Right, but you can't put a title on them, and so
Right.
that's an interesting deal too.
Yeah.
Is like
Can't diagnose another person.
no, it's
No.
trying to help people, but not trying to coddle,
Right.
and just the balancing act of like, man, I know you are an alcoholic or an
Right.
addict, but I can't
Right.
tell you that.
Right.
If you say you are, I'll help you find a group of people you can relate to.
Right.
But if not, call me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Until you
plant
know you
seeds,
are.
right? Like
I knew I was an addict though. Like I knew for a really long time. I just didn't believe in the solution. I didn't
ooh, that part.
I didn't believe in it. I thought I was terminally unique. I thought I was sicker than anyone else. I thought my life was different. I thought what the damage that was done to my brain and my body. I had seizures. I had a whole bunch of PTSD. Like I just thought there's no way that everybody seemed to be happy and they didn't seem to like have that what I had until I started to like listen for the similarities until I started to like really see that not everybody is going to relate. And to this day, I end up getting people who have PTSD.
Yeah.
And people who have done a lot of things, who've sold their body, who've all the things because these are my people and I understand and
that's the people that we trust today.
Yeah.
The people that
get it.
are open about being thieves, stealing from their their parents, their grandparents,
Yeah.
being cheaters, being more or less terrible human beings, myself included, right? But that's who I trust today.
Yeah.
That's who I lean into. That's who guides me through this thing. That's who holds me accountable. Is these people that society
what's kind
kind
of
of
interesting too is that we were very attracted to the same people that weren't in recovery, and they they were people that co-signed us wanting to be stuck in our addictions and our stinking thinking, and then we're attracted to the same people, but we're attracted to the people now on the other side of the fence of it, the people that are focused on the solution now, and we know them. They're our people. Like, we speak the same language, we laugh at the same stuff, you know. We'll talk about our escapades, and then we'll laugh and we'll go, oh my God, and then outside of recovery, people will be like, what?
Yeah,
like,
you couldn't share the same. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no way that you can share the same stories and relate and have people trust you and love you and want you to be at their houses.
Right.
And like,
I've had it where I've been someplace and I would share something because I'm so used to sharing it and have like a complete like flat response.
Yep.
And I'd be like, I have no idea what they're thinking right now.
These aren't my people. Right?
They don't get this. No.
And it's nice to have boundaries and limits to things, right?
Yeah.
Like, because we like to be around our people, and that's one thing, but you also have to be in, I don't know if it's the real world or just be outside with normies. And learning that the first year was tough, right? Going to a wedding and everybody's drinking, it's like, okay, call my sponsor or call my person I'm accountable to. But set limits, right? If somebody gets past a certain point, like I don't care if other people drink. That's their deal. They're not an alcoholic like me.
Right.
1 or 2 drinks, fine. That's cool.
Right.
3 or 4 drinks, starts to get questionable, right? And then they start to get that buzz. They start to spill their drinks, and it's like, okay, I'm out of here.
Right.
Right? And I don't have to explain myself.
Right.
That's what I figured out.
Right.
Is I was always justifying. I have to leave. I'm not here for this. Because I'm the victim.
It's crazy how nobody really cares. I mean, they don't want
they don't.
They don't want you to necessarily leave, but if you say you have to go and you're matter of fact about it, you got to go.
Yeah.
If you say you don't drink and you're matter of fact about it, you don't drink.
And if
we're the ones who made the big deal about it.
Yeah.
Like, is anybody going to love me? You know, is anybody going to want me if I'm not participating in what they're doing?
Or care what I'm wearing, or care what I say. Nobody really does. You know, like they might get something from it, but setting those boundaries has been so healthy. And you see people who you set a verbal boundary with and they walk over it. And it's like, that's cool too, because you're not respecting my boundaries, so I'll set a firmer one that's silent, that you don't know anything about, and then with some consistency on my part, what's going to happen? They're going to start to respect my boundary. Or they're not going to be in my life.
Exactly.
So and figuring that out.
It's not about using the boundary to try to control or manipulate them to be different. It's basically saying, this is where I'm not going to participate. So either you join me over here or we don't join.
Yeah.
Because this wouldn't be healthy if we don't have that.
Yeah, and you don't want to tell somebody.
Things we don't learn growing up.
It's like, hey, I'm leaving because I value my life and I'd die if I started to do this.
Right.
I'm not the victim. No, dude, I'm just going to leave. I'm just going to walk out of here.
Right.
An Irish exit, and I used to be so good at that while I was drinking.
What's an Irish exit?
It's when you leave without telling anybody.
Oh, I never heard that before.
People would call me.
Why is it an Irish exit?
I don't know. I just, a term of endearment, right? So I heard about that. And
I always say exit stage left.
Yeah, I would always get calls like, where are you? I'm like, dude, I'm already at home. Chilling. I've been gone for an hour. So yeah, but going back to it, those boundaries are so important. The boundaries and limits, like you could be around it, you don't want to avoid it totally, because that's kind of a slippery slope too. But
you don't want to make it a big deal either way.
Yeah.
You don't want to avoid it, and you don't want to like focus on it so much that it becomes like an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we know when we're doing something for the right reason and we're taking care of ourselves in the situation.
You could feel it.
You could
right?
feel it.
You could feel it in your chest, like.
And for me, I know, like I said earlier, there's this other voice that would like to, say, hey, like I remember when I almost relapsed and I was at a thing and I saw people drinking. I was at a club. My ex-husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, was a nightclub DJ, and I was feeling particularly sorry for myself, and so I had that I'm separate, I'm different, bleh, and all of a sudden I started telling myself, why is everybody having more fun than I am?
Yeah.
And that wasn't me. That was, hey, psst.
Yep.
From that voice going, hey, can you hear me now? Okay, is this thing on? Why is everybody having more fun than we are? And all of a sudden, the craving, the obsession started coming over me, and I'm standing there, and I have a head full of recovery, and I have everybody having more fun than I am, feeling sorry for myself, and I went through like a struggle with it that night, and then I gave in, and I didn't drink, but I said, I'll do it tomorrow if I still feel this way, because it was something I learned in recovery. You know, just for today we don't drink.
Yeah.
Tomorrow it's a totally different story, and that saved my life.
You could evaluate your intentions there, right? Or your intention is to feel bad because you're not having as much fun as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly. That's me taking your inventory.
Yeah.
But like,
no. I was
in that situation.
I was there, and I was wanting to be part of, and I was already bringing even into the club my shitty thinking.
Yep.
So it didn't just start there.
Yeah.
You know, I was like feeling sorry for myself, and that could be its own addiction.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the gateway drug.
Yep.
Feeling sorry for yourself and getting really like cozy in it,
Oh,
and
I
like
love
feeling all the inner pharmacy drugs of feeling
Victim,
sorry for
yeah.
yourself. You know, like just getting into that.
The poor
and then
me's,
go,
and I've been through so much. I'm gonna justify treating you terribly and then make you feel bad about it,
and then creating more wreckage, and then having to like check out to make myself feel better because this is just a really hard day.
Yeah, and then I would justify like, this is why I'm using, because you did this.
Right.
Like
bullshit. It started way before that.
Like the flip side, when I used to date, like when I was in my disease, right? Somebody was bad. I'm like, this is cool, right? They're on my level. They're going through it. They're sick too.
Right.
But if somebody was too good, I'm like, they're too good for me. How could you be with this piece of shit?
Right.
Like, how dare, like, so then I would start judging them, never looking at myself in the mirror. You know, it's like, what a
you're
weird
either
thing.
not good enough for me, or you're too good for me. A
That's
whole
so sick.
episode could be on that subject.
That's completely sick.
It is. Yeah.
Going through like a past sexual inventory, right? That's, a lot of people don't talk about that. They talk about some resentments or different things, and that's where I learned a lot about myself.
Yeah.
Right. I started, and it's just like this ego-driven bravado. I did this, checking these boxes, right?
Right.
No, you start getting it. I started getting more into it. And I'm like, okay, all right, and that's when the internal struggle for being needed, or the victimization in certain relationships,
controlling something, or avoiding intimacy, or keeping somebody at arm's distance, or using it
for that dopamine rush, right?
Checking out with it, needing to escape everything.
What's your intent, right?
Yeah.
And my intention,
seeing somebody as a means to an end, wanting to just be with them, but so that I can have a certain experience. It's amazing when you dig deeper and you find out what's behind the behavior. It's fascinating, actually.
Yeah. A lot of stuff a lot of the onion layers to peel back,
But again, not even showing that we're bad, showing that we are misguided, like we're just in survival modes and not having any clear idea. Like we don't have to be running on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's who I was. It's not who I am today.
Right. I know you got into a relationship when you first got into recovery, and they do say,
against a lot of suggestions, right? I started dating somebody who I met in rehab, and I like to say it wasn't like a rehab romance. We weren't doing anything in residential or in IOP, but the day that she got out of IOP, I started dating her.
But did you know you were going to be like, that we're going to be together?
Oh yeah, we were talking for a while. I was full of shit still, it's totally full of it.
Yeah.
And
but did you have like a special feeling, like you were supposed to know her or anything, or were you just at that point?
It was something that I prayed about. I prayed that I didn't want to search for it still. I wanted to attract it. Right? And so
I love that.
I was driving up to Kolob Reservoir, and I get a text from her on the way back down. I didn't have service, and she kind of proclaimed liking me. But then she went to sleep. She sent another text message real quick, and it's like, I'm sorry if I went over, if it was too much. And I sent her a message. I'm like, no, I've had dreams about you. Like, I am totally. So right off the get-go, I told myself that it was somebody that God put in my life, but going through this past 2.5 years almost with her, I know that God put her in my life, and even with that being said,
walk, because now the two of you are in recovery, know, you're learning together, you're walking through stuff together. I mean, that's a lot, It
is. And you know what? I wouldn't suggest it to any person I'm directing through this process. But it's been wonderful.
But you wouldn't tell them not to, because you'd be a big fat hypocrite then.
No, because it's their journey, right?
Exactly.
If you want to do something, go for it, dude. I'll tell you what I learned through my process, but so it's
But there's a lot of intimacy in that. A lot of bonding can happen in that. I mean, there was, I used to watch all these psychology psychology study video, I can't explain, documentaries. And they were talking about the chemical connections and the love that people feel, like when you take them and you put them through an experience together, how they're much more likely to connect and bond. But you take those same two people and you put them in like they're just going on a typical date and they're just being like, oh, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? That they're not going to have that connection. And so when people would go into like adventure parks and go on roller coaster rides together, and they have the adrenaline rush, or they go to escape rooms and they figure out how to get out together, or something like that, where they do something where they have to like do something together. They all that kind of chemical together helps to really do that. And so maybe the only way that you could have met her was when the two of you were vulnerable, and in that and going through that, maybe you wouldn't have met each other.
In that process, right? Like being in a rehab with somebody, that's as vulnerable as it gets.
Oh yeah.
So hearing the raw and just unedited version of her life, and her seeing me going through it, being as completely vulnerable as possible, that binded us together, right? We knew everything about each other before we even knew that we liked each other.
Yeah.
We were buds.
Yeah.
I remember her slipping me a note before I left. Call me, let's stay in touch, let's be friends.
Yeah.
And I wasn't trying to mess up her recovery, so I'm like, no, I can't do this. And then my heart starts to override that. It's like, you know what, maybe give it a try.
That's really beautiful, because people can go and be in relationships for years, even friendships, and not even know half of this stuff. And people can keep secrets, and not really want to show themselves, but to start off so open and not have the agenda of trying to be with each other, but really being there both sincerely to heal. That's just incredible anyway. Even if you guys didn't end up together, the friendship and the experience of having that level of intimacy is so powerful.
Yeah, to know so much about each other going into it could have been a fault, could have been a problem, right? But instead we used it, and it through vulnerability and honesty and communication, it's worked. And it's been work. It's not smooth, but life isn't really smooth. Yeah. And so going through those things, and then being slipped a little note right before she left, because she has a little bit more time than me, which makes it a 13. Makes it funny, right?
Yeah.
So I read the note and I'm like, dude, this is something I could think about a little bit more, and started to pursue it, and it's worked out wonderfully. We long distance dated for a little bit, and then she moved here.
Where did she live?
She was in Utah.
In Utah.
Yeah.
Is that where you were from, Utah?
No, my family was from there, from St. George, but I'm born and raised here in Vegas.
And your father went back to Utah.
Yeah, because he was raised in St. George. He was born in Beaver, Utah, but raised in St. George. So,
Gotcha. All right.
So I kind of had an affinity towards Utah, And so, it's dating and recovery.
But she also got the warning not to date too. I bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody. All of the things, all the people
I think that when you do things for the right reasons, even if it doesn't work out, and you really, because there is a risk to it, like we don't necessarily know who we are. We are full of secrets usually, and we don't really know what we really like. We don't have any relationship tools. Like, so what are we really bringing to the table? In general, that's why it's recommended, but it's not a rule.
Yeah.
It's just recommended because, a lot of the relationships that people have going into recovery are not the ones they're going to end up wanting to have when they're in recovery.
The majority of them are.
They made the decision out of the wrong, unhealthy part of their mind to join with a person, and now, it becomes harder. But when you have two people that really both want to heal, it could be really a good support and a good partnership.
Yeah, and if you focus on yourself individually in that relationship and make sure there's a little bit of separation between certain things, it could be as healthy as possible, right? You're able to communicate things and walk through certain fires with grace and just handle things with like an introspective viewpoint of, hey, this is my part in it. This is what I'm noticing, having a voice in things, being able to set boundaries. What a crazy process, right? I'm so thankful for it. Found somebody who I'd like to be with for the rest of my life, and to find it in those dark times, going through all those things, it's, two miracles, just trying to live our lives, right?
Yeah. And so your brother was one of your motivations, and it's like you're living amends. And then your son is one of your motivations, wanting him to not see.
Having him see me walk this path, right? Because he was 4 or 5 when I got into it. So he's old enough to know a lot of things. And so there's certain things that happen. Like when I was in IOP, we were walking, and it was outside this church, and I looked down and there was a cross, and he picks it up and he says, "Uncle Dilly left that for you."
Ooh.
And for me, that's when it was really like my living amends to my son is working, right? Like I don't have to pat myself on the back, but I do have this thing inside me that says, hey, he didn't die in vain, right? That my son can see me walk this path, and my brother can still be watching me, right? Like there's...
of course, we're souls. We're not these bodies anyway. But it's really powerful because neither of us, I had a friend that in recovery who used to say that everybody serves as either an ominous warning or an inspiration. And we had a lot of ominous warnings, but that's great, but it doesn't show us what to do.
Yeah.
And so by him being exposed, because you were exposed to addiction and tragedy and stuff like that when you were young.
Yeah.
And so your son is exposed to tragedy, but he's also exposed to the solution.
Yeah.
He's exposed to God. He's exposed to recovery. And to see that, to see somebody actually succeeding and doing it, and not just one person that he has as a parental figure, but the fact that you are partnering with another person who's in that gives so many tools and so much to see, to hear, to be helpful, for him to know, he's...
Because, to be honest, he's got more than a 50% chance to be an addict or alcoholic himself, right? So to have his mom in recovery, to have me in recovery, to have my girlfriend in recovery,
phenomenal.
It's a blessing,
huge,
right? It's
huge.
And he sees what I'm doing in this process. He sees the footwork, right? And it's stuff that maybe I don't talk about as much that he sees with his little eyes,
Yeah, but we see with more. Like we see the energy, we see the things that are not going wrong. We see, to be able to have a consistent environment where we could feel safe, where we feel like the parental figure, has our back, that we can be the child.
And that's not a facade.
Gift. Like what a gift.
It's such a gift. Like I feel like in some ways I grew up with a parental facade that it's everything's fine, right? A gloss cover over it. But we don't put a gloss cover over things in my house.
Good.
It's a change of pace. It's breaking of those generational curses.
Yes.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah.
But it's something that he could see. He could see the truth of life. He's seen death. He's seen addiction. He's seen alcoholism, and he's only 8 years old.
Yeah.
Right. So he goes with me to meetings. He knows the verbiage. He knows the people. This is my life, and that's his life too. And
it's beautiful.
Wow, like you said, a blessing, a total blessing, and a gift to be able to.
And you speak at podiums too. You go and you go all kinds of places, rehabs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love that we recover out loud. I love that, because addiction is something that we hide. PTSD is something we are in a dark corner in our own mind, let alone, do things in secrecy. We have to be able to talk about this so that we can reach the ears of people who are hiding and who don't have hope. I would have loved to hear messages like this when I was a little girl. It was a different time back then.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps from you saying that.
Yeah, so this is amazing, and and everything that you do that your son is exposed to affects other kids too, and because he's learning this stuff that honestly, like everybody needs to learn, tools on how to live in harmony with other people and not come from a very selfish, self-seeking, fear-based mentality.
Yeah, and he sees me pray, he sees me pray in meetings and at different times, and it's not an organized religion thing, right? It's a spirituality thing.
Yeah.
So he could see me walk that path and figure it out for himself.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be, go to a certain place and be forced to do that. And not that I was forced to do that, but I don't want to implement that in my household.
No.
So he sees.
Especially because if you have you tell me what to do, I'm going to go the other way. You don't want to be like forcing something on him.
If I'm spiteful,
he's a little you.
Yeah, he's 10 times as spiteful as I would
Yeah.
be, right? Like, and he's better at it than me.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure. You know,
Yeah, that's-
little you is like going, so if I have to do this, so maybe
I'm
I
like,
won't do this.
Daddy's little manipulator. That's great. You know?
That's lovely. What were you saying? You said something. I don't remember what it was. You were sharing about like how he was like Daddy's little manipulator when you were sharing at a thing.
Oh my gosh.
Something that happened. It was so funny. I forgot what it was.
Oh, he wanted to do a stand to sell
yeah.
things, right? And there's like a common area that has rocks in it in my neighborhood. And
Uh-huh.
him and his little buddy, they went and got a bunch of rocks and started selling them and made $36.
Wow.
And I'm like, dude, that's cool that you're a salesman. It's rocks. It's not.
Did he paint them or write on
They
them?
just smashed them in the garage. They just took a hammer and smashed them. They had deals going on and all that stuff. And so
they just smashed them to do what? They just look different?
just
or?
to make them different sizes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he's like an entrepreneur, we'll say.
Oh my God.
A street entrepreneur.
And he made $36?
Yeah, so it was cool. But there's a lot of things that happen with him that I'm like, okay, you're working me, little buddy.
Yeah.
You're absolutely working me. So I have to remember to have a little bit of grace with him.
Yeah.
And he's just a kid. But
Yeah, of course.
it's a cool process.
It's adorable. It's adorable to see you with him. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I knew it would be good. I knew
enjoyed it.
And it was so much that we talked about that I feel like could be really rich and helpful to people. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio, here in Las Vegas. See you next week.